It's too hot for an intro. What? Ha ha ha. Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review metric, Synthetica. Metric, the famed Ontario rock band with strong ties to broken social scene thanks to the band's frontwoman Emily Haines, who actually has some pretty fantastic solo material that I would listen to if I were you. Go listen to it. But this new LP heads in a direction that Metric's last album, Fantasies, kind of helped put them in. Going back to their first LP, Metric pretty much always had a very, I guess, simple, straightforward, fun, kind of unoffensive indie rock sound, whose boldest characteristics were probably Emily Haines' synth playing and her singing. And Metric's sound has just grown more and more polished over time, and Synthetica is their most polished album yet. Like the title suggests, I get kind of a synthetic feel from some of these tracks. The opening hits, and it's very atmospheric, it's very glossy, the guitars have a lot of sheen on them once they eventually kick in, and the keyboards too. The really big, kind of electrified presentation reminds me a little bit of a Coldplay album, especially the song Breathing Underwater, but in Metric's case, the music comes off nowhere near as well produced, as well written, or kind of performed all that well. Performed with any energy, because a lot of these songs to me just feel really flat, really kind of robotic. Let's take it back to the first track on this album. There is such a build-up on the introduction of this track, and it's all for pretty much just bringing things into a very lifeless drum beat with no real push behind it. And tracks on here that have a bit of a stronger groove on them, like the second song, Youth Without Youth, don't really feel a little bit like kind of a new wave throwback, but not really in a good way. It feels kind of restrained and restricted, and has these cheesy vocoder vocals over this bluesy hook. It just reminds me of the really awkward transitions that bands such as Gang of Four or Public Image Limited or The Clash made as they were trying to adapt to some of the trendier sounds in the 80s. Metric doesn't have the same reputation that those bands do when it comes to living up to their name on this album. But the thing is, Metric doesn't really have the same kind of pressures that those bands did to change into this kind of aesthetic, which is why it's so confusing that they would continue to suck the rock energy out of their songs. You know, punk has never really been a major element of Metric's music, a major element, but it was kind of necessary to get this band's very simplistic, straightforward songs across and make them kind of catchy, exciting, somewhat thrilling. Instead, we're just kind of getting some forgettable synth pop songs on here. The title track on here has a bit of a surprise in that it is kind of driving, really kind of energetic. I'm liking the guitars on that track. It's feeling much more, I guess, engaging than any of the other songs on this LP. And another surprise is the second to last track, which actually has a Lou Reed vocal feature. Now, I know a lot of you guys are probably still sour with Lou Reed because of Lulu, but I have to say that on this new Metric album, it is just a huge misuse of his voice and his personality. They're really trying to get him to sing over these hyper-harmonious, ultra-synthetic indie pop tunes, and it's just not a good match. It sounds kind of like hearing Captain Beefheart screaming avant poetry over the Postal Service's debut album. And the thing is, Lou isn't even really mixed all that well in the track. I mean, I know the guy is getting up there in age, but don't bury him yet, especially not in cheesy synths. You know, if an album is going to make a conscious decision to not be bold or adventurous or inventive in any way, then it should at least be catchy or energetic or pretty, but I would say this album falls short when it comes to those things too. Overall, just kind of feeling a strong 3, maybe a light 4 on this LP. You know, I can kind of get or see the appeal as to why people would dig on it, but it is just so not for me. What did you guys think of this album? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What should I review next? And yeah, that's about it. Anthony Fantano, Metric, Synthetica, forever.